It is a little after noon, and the sky over Jerusalem is starting to go wrong. You are standing outside the city wall, on a low rise of bare rock the locals call the Skull. There are 3 crosses here. You can smell blood and dust and the sour sweat of soldiers who have done this 100 times and are bored by it. Somewhere behind you a woman is trying not to scream. In front of you a man is nailed to a beam of olive wood. Naked, lifted a few feet off the ground, wrists spiked through, feet folded and pinned. And he is trying to breathe. That last part matters more than you know. Here is something almost nobody tells you about crucifixion. It was not designed to kill quickly. It was designed to make a man kill himself slowly with his own lungs. When you hang by your outstretched arms, your chest locks in the wrong position. You can breathe in. You cannot breathe out. To say anything at all, you have to push your whole body up on the nail through your feet. Every breath is a decision. Every breath is paid for in blood, which means every word costs even more. A dying man on a cross does not make speeches. He screams or he goes silent. That is the physics of it. The Romans knew exactly what they were doing. Cicero called it the most cruel and hideous of punishments, a thing too shameful to even name in polite company. And this one is not a legend that grew up in the dark. Tacitus, a Roman historian with no love at all for Christians, records it flatly. Christus was put to death under the governor Pontius Pilate. It happened on a real hill to a real man on a documented afternoon. And yet this man, in the middle of a death engineered to steal his breath, spent that breath anyway. Not once. 7 times, 7 sentences, pushed out one agonizing lungful at a time over roughly 6 hours. 7 separate times he chose to lift his torn body up the nails just so he could say something out loud. Nobody makes that choice for small talk. Every one of those 7 sentences was worth dying a little faster for. This is not a story about a Roman execution. This is not a story about how much pain a body can take. This is not even a story about a good man dying badly. This is a story about 7 sentences, and about a truth almost everyone misses. If you line them up in the exact order he said them, they are not 7 scattered gasps. They are one complete message. A beginning, a middle, and an end, and the end is a single word. In the original Greek that this was written down in, the 6th thing he says is only 1 word long. It is the same word a Roman merchant would stamp across the bottom of an invoice when a customer had paid off everything he owed. 1 word that meant settled, closed, nothing left on the account. We are going to get to that word, but not yet. First, we have to start where he started, because the very first thing this dying man says, with the very first breath he pays for, is not for himself. It is not for his mother. It is not for his friends. It is a prayer for the men who are, at that exact moment, still holding the hammers. Stay with me. This is where it begins. The first word is forgiveness, and he says it to the wrong people. Right below him, 4 Roman soldiers are on their knees, not praying, gambling. His clothing is the only thing of value he has left in the entire world, so they have divided his outer garments into 4 shares, and now they are throwing dice for the last piece, a seamless tunic, woven in one piece too good to tear. These are the men who drove the iron through his wrists an hour ago. They did it without a word, the way you or I might hang a picture. To them this is a Friday, this is the job, and the man above them looks down. He pushes his body up the nail to fill his lungs. And he spends that breath like this. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Sit with who he is talking about. Not his disciples. Not the weeping women, the executioners, the men whose hands are still dirty from nailing him up. His first sentence, his first purchased breath, is a prayer that God would not hold this against the very people doing it to him. Here is what most people miss. He does not say, forgive them, because they are innocent. They are not innocent. They are killing an innocent man and rolling dice at his feet. He says, forgive them, because they know not what they do. He is not excusing the act. He is telling you the truth about nearly every human being who has ever wounded another person and had no real idea how deep the wound went. That is most of us. That is on some day you would rather not think about. You, hold that in your chest. We are coming back to it before this is over now, the second word. And this one goes to a criminal. There is a man dying on the cross beside him. 2 thieves were crucified that day, one on each side. Church tradition gives the repentant one a name, Dismas. For most of the morning he has been mocking Jesus, hurling the same insults as the crowd. But somewhere in those hours, something in him shifts. He has been watching the man in the middle. He has heard him pray for the soldiers who nailed him. He has watched him take insult after insult and answer with nothing but mercy. And something in the thief breaks open. He turns his head, which costs him his own agony, and he says, barely, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Look at how small his request is. He is not asking to be rescued. He is not asking to be taken down. He knows he is going to die today, and he deserves it, and he says so. All he asks is not to be forgotten. Just remember me. And Jesus turns his head, which costs him another lungful of fire, and answers, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." That word, paradise, is worth stopping on. In the Greek it is paradisos, and it did not originally mean clouds and harps and gold streets. It was a borrowed Persian word, and it meant a walled royal garden. The private, protected garden of a king, where only the invited could walk. And any Jewish man hanging on that hill would have heard the echo underneath it. A garden, the garden, Eden, the one place the human race was thrown out of at the very beginning of the whole story, with an angel and a flaming sword set at the gate to keep us out forever. And here is a guilty dying thief, with maybe an hour of life left in him, being handed the one thing humanity lost at the start. The gate is open. Today, you are coming in with me. Think about what he did to earn that. Nothing. He had no time to earn it. He could not be baptized. He could not do a single good deed to balance the ledger of a lifetime. He had one honest sentence and a few minutes of borrowed breath, and it was enough. It was completely enough. But it gets closer, because the third word is the most personal of them all. This time he is not looking at soldiers or at a stranger on the next cross. He is looking straight down at his own mother. Her name is Mary. She is somewhere in her late 40s now, and she is a widow. Joseph has quietly dropped out of the story by this point, and the most likely reason is the plainest one. She has walked all the way to this hill to watch her firstborn son be tortured to death in public. She cannot look away, and she cannot do one single thing to help him. Beside her stands one friend, the disciple John, the only one of the 12 who did not run and hide. And from the cross, in the middle of suffocating, Jesus stops to arrange his mother's future. He looks down at her and says, "Woman, here is your son." Then he looks at John and says, "Here is your mother." And John, we are told, from that hour took her into his own home. Feel the smallness of that, and then feel how enormous it is. He is, if the story is true, the one carrying the weight of the whole world's wrong. The sky is about to go black, and he is using one of his 7 precious breaths to make sure his mom has a roof over her head and someone kind to look after her. Even now, at the very end, he will not let his mother walk down off that hill alone. He is dying, and he is still taking care of her. 3 sentences in. Do you see the pattern yet? Every word so far has pointed outward, away from himself, toward the men who killed him, toward a guilty stranger, toward the woman who raised him. He has not said one word about his own pain. That is about to change, because the 4th word turns inward, and it is the darkest sentence in the entire Bible. Before we cross into that dark, let me say one quick thing. If these 7 words are landing on you the way they land on me, do something small right now. Subscribe. That is the whole ask. This channel exists to walk slowly through moments like this one. The moments most videos rush past in 10 seconds, and every subscriber quietly tells the algorithm to carry this to one more person who might need to hear it today. That is it. No sales pitch. Just stay with us, because we have reached the hinge of the whole story. 3 words have pointed outward, to enemies, to a criminal, to his mother. But the 4th word turns all the way around. It points straight up, and for the first time in 6 hours, the man on the cross sounds like he is losing. At noon, the sun should be at its strongest. Instead, it goes out. The gospel writers are blunt about it. From the 6th hour to the 9th hour, from midday until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. Not a passing cloud, not a solar eclipse, The timing is impossible for that, because Passover falls on a full moon and an eclipse cannot happen then. Just darkness, in the middle of the day, for 3 hours, while the man on the center cross goes quiet. Try to picture the hill during those 3 hours. The gambling stops, the mocking, which had been constant all morning, trails off into an uneasy silence. Soldiers who have done this 100 times look up at a sky that is doing something they have never seen. The crowd that came out for a spectacle starts to shift on its feet, because a spectacle is fun only as long as it stays a spectacle. And you, standing there in that unnatural dusk, feel the temperature drop, and you cannot tell if it is the air or if it is something in your own chest. For 3 hours, nothing, the longest silence in the whole story. And then it breaks, and then out of that darkness comes the loudest thing he has said yet. Not in the polished Hebrew of the temple readings. In Aramaic, the ordinary everyday language he learned as a boy in Nazareth, the language a man cries out in when he is far past holding himself together. He screams, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me? Stay with me here, because this is the hardest line in the book and it is very easy to hear it wrong. Some in the crowd literally do hear it wrong. The word Eli sounds close to the name Elijah, and they start muttering that he is calling for the old prophet to rescue him. He is not. He is quoting. Those exact words are the opening line of Psalm 22, a song King David wrote 1,000 years before this day. And here is the part that should raise the hair on your arms. That same psalm, written centuries before Rome ever invented the cross, goes on to describe a man surrounded by mockers, his bones out of joint, his hands and feet pierced, and men casting lots for his clothing. David wrote this exact scene 10 centuries early, and the dying man is now quoting its first line out loud. But do not let the quotation make it comfortable. Whatever else is happening inside that sentence, the man is telling you that he feels abandoned by the one voice that had never once left him. Notice what he calls God. In every other word from the cross he says, Father, my Father. Here and only here, in the dark, he does not. Here it is just my God. The closeness has gone out of the name, and he says so out loud in his mother tongue into a black sky. Here is the weight of it, and it is meant for you. If you have ever prayed into a silence that gave nothing back, if you have ever knelt in the worst night of your life and felt like the ceiling of heaven had turned to iron, then understand something. He got there first. He went all the way to the bottom of that feeling, so that you would never once arrive at a place he had not already been standing in before you. Every dark room you have ever been afraid to walk into, he walked into first. Every silence that ever scared you, he sat in first. When you feel most alone, that is not proof he is absent. It may be the one place you are standing closest to him, because it is the one place he has already been. And when the darkness has done its work, he says something almost unbearably human. 2 words, I thirst. The man who, if any of this is true, once spoke the oceans into existence, is now begging for a single mouthful of water. That is how completely he poured himself into a human body. This was no spirit merely play-acting a death floating above the pain. The doctors who have studied the mechanics of crucifixion describe exactly this. A body deep in shock, bleeding, fluids gone, every system screaming for water. A well-known medical study laid out the whole grim process breath by breath. The thirst was not symbolic. The thirst was real. The dying was real all the way down. So a soldier takes a sponge, soaks it in posca, the cheap sour wine vinegar the Roman army carried and drank, sticks it on a stalk and lifts it to the dying man's lips. And look closely at which plant they used. Hyssop, the very same branch the Israelites once dipped in lamb's blood to paint over their doorframes on the night of the first Passover, so that death would see the blood and pass over their homes. Even now, in the smallest, almost invisible prop of the scene, the story is quietly telling you what it means. The lamb, the blood, the Passover, death passing over, he wets his cracked lips. He gathers himself one more time. And what comes next is not a groan of defeat. It is a verdict. One word, the word we have been circling since the very first minute. In English, we translate it as 3 words. It is finished. But in the Greek that John wrote it down in, it is only one. Tetelestai. And I promised you all the way back at the start that we would come to this word. So here it is. Let me hand you what it actually meant to the people who first heard it. Tetelestai was not a cry of defeat. It was an ordinary word from daily life, and everyone who first heard this gospel would have known it. A servant said it when he had finished the exact task his master gave him. Done, completed, carried out in full. And a merchant stamped it across the bottom of a bill when a debt was paid off. The whole thing, down to the last coin. Archaeologists have pulled receipts out of the ancient dust, with this very word written across the face of them. It means, paid in full, nothing left owing, do not come back. Now hear it again from the cross through a set of collapsing lungs. This is not a man saying, I am finished. This is not a man saying, it is over, I have lost. This is not the final whimper of someone the world beat down and defeated. This is a workman looking at a completed job. This is a debtor's account, stamped clean and shut, tetelestai, paid in full, and this is the exact moment the whole thing turns inside out. For 6 hours you have been watching what looks like the worst thing that can happen to a person. The slow, public, humiliating destruction of an innocent man by an empire that did not even remember his name by dinner time. And in one word he tells you that you have been reading the scene backwards this entire time. He was not losing. He was working. The cross was not something being done to him against his will. It was something he had come to get done. And now the work was complete. He had one breath left. He did not spend it on the crowd or the soldiers or even on one last word to his mother. He spent it going home. Father, the word he had not spoken since the darkness swallowed the hill. It comes back. The distance in that fourth cry, my God, is gone now, and Father returns to his mouth. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And if you had grown up in a Jewish home in that century, you would have recognized that line the instant you heard it. It comes from Psalm 31. But more than that, it was the bedtime prayer. It was the sentence a Jewish mother taught her small child to whisper in the dark before falling asleep. Lay me down, keep me safe. I trust you with me until the morning comes. That is how he chooses to die. Not raging, not clawing at the nails, not clinging to the last seconds. He dies the way a worn-out child lies down at the end of a very long day and hands himself over, completely without fear, to a father he trusts in the dark. And then he simply lets go. Let me bring this all the way down to where you actually live. Almost every person listening to this has sat, or one day will sit, at the bedside of someone in their final hours. And you learn something in that room that you cannot learn anywhere else in life. The words as a dying person spends their very last breath on are the truest, most expensive words they will ever say. Nobody performs at the end. Nobody wastes it. Whatever they reach for with that final breath is the thing they most deeply, most honestly meant. And he reached for you. His last words were not a private goodbye whispered to his own family and no one else. Forgiveness for his enemies, a wide-open gate for a guilty man. A mother handed into safe hands, a debt stamped paid. Every one of those 7 breaths had your name folded somewhere inside it. And one man on that hill understood it before anybody else did. The Roman centurion, the officer in charge of the whole execution, a hardened professional who had watched more men die than he could ever count, stood at the foot of that cross. This was a man who had seen every kind of death a cross could produce. He had watched men curse their mothers, curse the emperor, curse God with their final breath. He had watched them beg and bargain and break. He knew what dying looked like in every ugly shape it came in. But he had never seen a death like this one. He watched how this one man died. He watched the darkness and the dignity and that final peaceful letting go, a man handing himself over instead of being taken. And he said the one thing that not a single religious expert in the crowd would say: surely this man was the Son of God. The very first sermon preached after the cross was preached by the executioner. The man who had helped kill him became the first to name who he was. And if the truth could reach a Roman soldier standing in the dark with blood on his hands, then hold on to this. It can reach you, exactly where you are sitting right now. So let me leave you with 3 things to carry out of this. First, the 7 words are not 7 scraps of pain. Read in the order he actually said them. They are one whole arc. From Father, forgive them, to a gate thrown open, to a mother cared for, to the cry in the dark, to the thirst, to it is finished, to into your hands. A beginning, a middle, and a completed end. He did not fall to pieces on that cross. He finished a sentence he had started 6 hours earlier, and the last word of it was, done. Second, go back and stand under that very first word one more time, because that one has your name written in it. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That was never only about 4 soldiers with a hammer 2,000 years ago. It is the truest thing anyone has ever said about you and me, that most of the harm we cause without ever grasping the size of it. And his response to people who did not even understand what they were doing to him was not a curse, and not a bill. It was a prayer to let them go free. And third, this is the one I want you to actually feel tonight. That 6th word, tetelestai. Whatever you have been dragging behind you into this video, the thing you did, the person you used to be, the debt you are absolutely certain is still open and still owing on your account. The entire point of that one Greek word is that it was stamped across your bill too. Not reduced, not renegotiated, not in progress. There is nothing left for you to add to it, because there was nothing left that he did not finish. That right there is the whole difference between religion and what happened on that hill. Religion hands you a bill and says, keep paying, keep trying, keep earning. The cross holds up a receipt and says one word, done. Of the 7 words, which one hit you the hardest? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and I promise you are not the only one who felt that particular one. He came into the world with a handful of words spoken over him by an angel. He left it with 7 words of his own, and he paid for every one of them, one breath at a time. And the last full word he ever said, before he laid himself down like a tired child in the dark and let go, was not goodbye, it was finished.